So. All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Is it 6 o'clock? Oh, 6:01. Whew. So welcome to week 2 of... Sorry, I was just making sure that my phone was switched off. Welcome to week 2 of professional practice. For those of you, I think everyone knows me, but I'm Kathleen anyway. And I am facilitating tonight, and we have a very special guest, Rebecca Ruff, Beck, as we call her. And Beck's going to give our guest lecture tonight, and I urge you to take all the opportunities that you have to pick her mind, because it is full of knowledge, and she's very busy. And sometimes even when you work in the same office at her, you have to almost like stand outside her window and, you know, catch her in between meetings to try and talk to her. So while she is here and all hours, I urge you to use this valuable resource. I'm going to tell you a fact about Beck before she starts. Beck is not a librarian. Now, some of you might be going, why on earth, in professional practice, would we have a non-librarian speaking to us? Well, I'm going to tell you. Beck is the Workplace and Infrastructure Manager at QUT Library, has been there for a long time, and knows everything there is to know about QUT Library. She's like there's her and one other lady, Margaretta, who, if you need to know an answer for something, Beck and Margaretta are your ladies. But Beck's not a librarian, and it's really important that you meet someone like Beck, because when you work in a library, someone like Beck will be in charge of the money and the infrastructure and all that type of thing. And you'll have to go to them and you'll have to say, oh, look, we want to do this program or we want to put on this event. And sometimes they'll say no. And sometimes they'll say yes. The good thing is when you go to Beck, she already gets it. She values libraries. Oh, come in. Hello. She values libraries. She understands the way libraries operate. You don't have to go in and say, no, 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 literacy is important and our students are important. And Beck's already on the same page with you. So it's actually really lucky to have a Beck. But in some organisations, their Beck might not be this Beck. So you might be going to somebody that controls the purse strings or somebody that controls something else and having to start from a different place and having to say, no, well, hang on, let me tell you why it's important, and having to start 10 steps back. So just keep that in mind when Beck talks. She might not be a librarian, but she completely gets it, which makes it much easier when you have to go to her and speak to her about resourcing and things, because she understands it. But out in industry, you're not always going to have somebody like this. So I think it's really important that you get to see the perspective from somebody that works in libraries and is a member of the profession but not a qualified librarian. She's also really awesome. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Beck.
Let's carry that around.
Yeah, oh, you can clip it on your microphone.
Sure. Okay, thank you for having me and for that introduction. I hope I live up to the hype. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to start with a little bit of information about QUT Library. So QUT Library key facts. We have about 145 full-time equivalent staff. We have peaks and troughs with our staff, as you can imagine. We obviously have more staff around during semesters, and that can equate to up to nearly 200 physical bodies. We are the longest opening hours across the university, so we need to have a lot of staff to keep our services running. We have an operating budget in the vicinity of $13 million, so that's staffing and our non-salary budget to keep us functioning. We have we service approximately 45,000 students at QUT. So that's a little bit about our sort of basic staffing and budget. We're made up of 8 sections. We have 4 branch libraries: Gardens Point, Kelvin Grove, Law and Caboolture. So 4 branch libraries. The other 4 sections we have are library resource services. So they're the people who are responsible for our physical and electronic resources. So they do the ordering, they do cataloguing. We have our library e-services team, and the exact description of what they do is they're responsible for planning, management and effective implementation of IT for QUT library services across all of our campuses. That team is a mixture of pure librarians and pure technical staff. So it's about probably 2/3 technical staff, 1/3 librarians in that team. The research support team is one of our newly created teams in the last couple of years, and as the title suggests, they're there to support our researchers. The Library Secretariat is where I'm from. It is what you would probably consider the corporate area of the library. It has the executive, which is the director, the 2 associate directors and myself, and it contains a number of specialised roles that don't fit into a branch library or library resource services. So some examples of those roles are the Quality and Planning Manager, the Staff Development Officer, we have a Learning and Study Support Manager, we have an Heirs Librarian, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So we do have some specialised roles that fit into the Library Secretariat. So that's us, 8 sections. The next few slides, I just wanted to show a statistical snapshot. This is just 2015 of what we do, so what type of services we offer, and the volume or extent of services that we provide to our students. So 300,000 physical loans, that's obviously declining every year, the physical loan component. Nearly 2.6 million visits, so 2.6 million gate counts through our 4 branch libraries. Our e-books continues to grow exponentially every year, as you would expect. And our print books and AV is in the vicinity of about 450,000, with the largest collection at Kelvin Grove Library, which also includes our curriculum collection. So that also is declining as expected every year. We obviously offer, we've obviously got an online suite of resources available as well, and I am trusting that everyone here knows and has a copy of SiteRight. Otherwise, we need to have a word later. So online visits for SiteRight is over 732,000 for last year. We also have an online tutorial called Study Smart, which is online research and study skills tutorial, and it's available to all students. So over 40,000 hits on that page as well last year. QUT ePrints is our repository or it's an online digital collection of our scholarly publications by our staff. It is massive, QUT ePrints. So nearly 2.9 million downloads from ePrints last year. We do individual research consultations, so over 2,000 out into QUT. We run a number of seminars and workshops, so more than 3,000 attendances for research last year. Heirs is the Advanced Information Research Skills. It's for our HDR students, so we have an Heirs librarian who looks after that. It's the only module that QUT Library actually runs and teaches. It's our module. So 571 Heirs completions. We also, in the library, look after copyright. We have the University Copyright Officer based in our library, and they sit within our research support team. So 541 copyright inquiries last year as well. From an internal perspective, we had staff attend 81 staff training events. They attended 32 conferences, whether national or international, and our staff presented 27 publications or presentations at said conferences. This is just a breakdown really of looking at some of our some of our key services. So obviously the biggest thing that we're probably known for is the library help desk service. So that's that first tier frontline support as you walk into our library buildings. So last year we had 121,000 inquiries at our help desks. We had nearly 2,000 email inquiries and 7,200 individual chat conversations. So we also have virtual reference service as well. We run a bucket load of workshops and tours. So the tours and workshop attendance there, which obviously takes up a lot of our time, equated to nearly 37,000 people that we saw last year in any form of workshop. So those workshops might be something like Back to Study, an actual physical tour of our library, how to reference. So there's a suite of workshops that we may actually provide to students.
Sorry, we're just messaging because people online are saying that's a lot of stuff.
I could keep going. I've only given you the cream of our statistics. We've got hundreds of them. Stimulate, if you haven't heard of what Stimulate is a program which is managed by the library, and it supports students across QUT with science, maths and IT skills. It is, last year we saw, I think it was, I would have the number, someone would have written it down, 6,100 students we saw to provide assistance with science, maths and IT last year. So that is a very, it's a very worthwhile program, Stimulate. It's very, very popular. We also reach out into the local community where possible. So we do that through high schools and targeting high school students. So we do have tours for high school students. We have memberships for schools as well. In particular, we focus in Caboolture, in the lower socio-economic status areas, to target high schools in that area. And we go out and we will do classes into high schools about referencing or writing or whatever it may be to try and encourage students to consider university. Okay, what do I do? My job is never boring, I will give you that. I have worked for QUT Library in this particular role for 5 years. I've worked at QUT for about 10. This particular role is a very diverse role. I get bored easily, so it's good for me. Most of my role is strategic. I have a lot of strategic responsibility, which often will cross into operational because that's the way the world works. But the largest chunk of my role is human resource management. So you can imagine with a workforce that we've got up to 200 bodies with a large casual contingent. I'm your girl. So staffing structures is one of the things that I look after. In the HR, it's not just about recruitment and selection and looking at staffing structures. I also do things such as change management, performance management, day-to-day problem solving. I do manage recruitment and selection at a very high level because I know where everyone is at every moment of the day. And I have a very deep understanding of, you know, what our salary structures are like, what levels of staff we have, how many are in each group, what type of staff I've got, what issues I have with staff. And that comes with time. I've learnt this over, I've been doing this for a long time and I know the library staff very well. So the HR management is what I spend a lot of my day on. My actual real passion, which I could talk all day about, is workforce and succession planning. I'm a very big advocate of making sure that this library in particular has the right staffing structures in place now and for the future. There are a lot of libraries, a lot of academic libraries, which do not really look at their staffing structures, and they end up having to go through significant change processes and redundancies. So that's not something that I ever want to see, and workforce and succession planning is a way that we make sure that we have the right staff with the right skills in our libraries. So succession planning for me, of course, is about, that's a good point, whoever just wrote that.
Kath is just saying workforce planning and succession is not often done well.
Yeah, and I will say, one of the points I will make later about how libraries have changed is I really have noticed that there has been more of a focus on workforce planning over the last 5 to 10 years. When I first started, QUT Library was seen as a leader in workforce planning, and we were really the only academic library within Queensland that was actively doing it. That has certainly changed in my time in QUT Library. Succession planning is another big one, and it's a really big risk in a lot of libraries. Libraries are now getting more and more specialised type roles. So when you've only got one specialised type role and you run the risk of losing that person, that will set you back significantly. So succession planning is critical to have a look about how you can share that knowledge, how you give people opportunities to learn different skills, and it feeds into career development, professional development, that lifelong learning concept of ensuring that you are providing opportunities for your staff and you are setting your library up for the future. So I'll stop talking about workforce planning because it's what I do. Strategic planning for the library as a whole, and quality management are another 2 areas that I look after. I do have some help. I'll get there in a minute. It's not just me doing the lot. So in that area, we look at statistics, and you would have seen some of them. Libraries, of course, are very big on statistics. We're asked to collect a number of statistics to report to a number of external bodies. Statistics are important for us to prove what type or the quantity of services we're being delivered and whether our services are being used. Don't get confused with quality, but of the service we're delivering. So statistics are important to us, and I do have someone who helps me with those. We also look after surveys, any type of benchmarking, any type of service management activities, and also in my portfolio under service management is business continuity planning. So we have a series of plans to say, let's say, and this has happened, let's say we have a burst pipe in our building and one floor of our collection is inaccessible. How do you deal with that? Who needs to be contacted? What steps need to be taken? So we do have business continuity planning for all of our services and infrastructure. So I look after that as well. Corporate communication and reporting is the least favourite part of my role. We do a lot of internal reporting, and that's just the nature of the beast in an academic library or in QUT. So certainly do a lot of reporting. Health, safety and environment is also something that I enjoy. I worked formerly as a workplace health and safety officer in a previous life, so health, safety and environment is important to me. Libraries nowadays have less and less risk in the health and safety area because there's less and less manual tasks, but over the years there's certainly been a number of manual tasks that we have to be very careful of in terms of shelving and repetitive tasks, book moving in boxes, all those type of things. So health and safety and environment is also something close to my heart, and I'll stop talking about that one too. Building management. I do have strategic oversight for our building management. So any works that you see, major works going on in our libraries, I'll have some hand in it, way, shape or form. So I don't mind that stuff actually. Budgets. As Kathleen said, I have some level of, the director and I of the library, we do manage the budget for the library. So that includes things such as managing our asset fleet. So we also have an extensive amount of assets. So they include things such as laptops, iPads, computers. It also includes any of our specialised equipment, so our express transaction units in our lending area, our self-check units, all of those type of things need to be managed from a financial perspective, a maintenance perspective, so that all fits into my portfolio as well. I have anything to do with finance. If you want catering, if you want a reimbursement, if you want travel, then that all comes through my office in some way, shape or form. And I also have staff development in my portfolio as well. So I don't sleep, no. So I do have a little bit of help. It's not just me. I have 1.7 full-time equivalent staff to assist me. One of those people purely looks after quality planning, and she's a quality and planning manager, so she does a lot of that statistics and surveys and benchmarking for me. I don't have to do it all. I also have a part-time staff development officer, so they also assist me. Everything else is mine. I thought I'd share a little bit about my academic background. So when I first finished school, in the 90s, I started off doing a Bachelor of Science. So I did a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry. Didn't really enjoy that much. And I went back to university and did a dual degree in Health Science with a major in Health Services Management and Business with a major in Accountancy. I've also completed postgraduate qualifications in HR. And there's just done things like Diploma of Project Management and Advanced Diploma of Management. So that's my academic background, and as Kathleen has pointed out, nothing to do with library or information science. And that's not what they employ me for anyway. My work history, I've obviously been at QUT for many years, so I've worked the majority of my time in the library. 5 years as the Workforce and Infrastructure Manager. I also worked for a couple of years as the Quality and Planning Manager for QUT Library. I have done numerous amounts of projects for QUT Library as well, generally in the building area. I've worked as a sessional academic in the School of Public Health and taught into project management and health finance. So that's me. I don't like being bored, clearly. Prior to QUT, I worked in aged care. I worked in aged care for about 6 years, and it was in a very similar role. It was people, buildings, finance. Didn't pay as well.
And she didn't get to work with libraries.
Nurses have their own challenges. So one of the questions Kathleen asked me to address today is how have I seen libraries change over the last 5+ years? So libraries have changed significantly in my time, and I've started essentially with QUT Library 8 years ago. So I just did a brain dump of some of the things that I have seen change. The collections comment is obviously a no-brainer. Physical collections continue to decline. our electronic access and availability of resources continues to grow exponentially. The other thing I've really noticed in terms of collections is there's certainly been an increase in consortia arrangements. So such things as the Bonus Plus scheme that we are in, which is obviously our students are able to access resources, a certain pool of resources at other institutions, and you can borrow from other institutions. So there's certainly been a lot more of those type of arrangements that I've seen come into play over the last 8 years. Spaces, one of my passions. Our spaces, as you can tell, it's less about collections. When I first came into Kelvin Grove Library and Gardens Point Library, the whole place was densely packed with shelving and collections. There was very little space for students to study. So certainly our spaces have changed remarkably over that time. It really is less about the collection. There's really a little focus on the collection, and it's more about our spaces. And it's about providing a diversity of spaces, individual spaces, group study spaces, flexibility of spaces, so flexible furniture. Most of our survey comments, and I can predict our survey comments generally pretty well when we do our client satisfaction survey, one due this year, is about power. The number of comments that we get about access to power in our libraries. If I could just put power on every skirting board, I still don't think I'd make the student population happy. But it is about access to power. It's about the Wi-Fi access to computers. So spaces have become extraordinarily important. And it's a different perspective on spaces since I first started. There's obviously been huge changes in technology. So we see a lot more students bringing multiple devices onto campus. Our services, I've just picked a few of the bigger changes in terms of our services. This one also is fairly obvious. The rise of online service options is remarkable. So our virtual reference, our email, and our Ask QUT knowledge base is certainly something that has grown over the last few years. The biggest change, I think, probably when I first started was the service desk models. So the old type of service desk where you had a lending desk and you had a reference desk, and it was an us-them mentality. Here's the wall, here's the student, here's the librarian. That's changed. You will see nearly in all of our libraries, pending funding, you will see a different look. You will see a rounder desk. It will be open. It's not that us and them mentality. It's one desk. You should not have to go to two desks. You want to come to the library, you want service, you go to the library help desk. That library help desk should be able to assist you with any of your library inquiries, whether it is about borrowing or whether it is about an actual learning and study question. So that certainly has changed in my time. We've seen in our buildings themselves greater co-locations of services for students. So whilst most students think that the library actually runs printing and IT and assignment minder, we don't. But those greater co-locations of our services are in our buildings, and that has certainly changed over recent years with refurbishments. One of the services that has grown massively is our academic skills advisors and the services that they provide. Academic skills advisors, or some version thereof, is present in many universities. They're not necessarily always in the library though. Those type of roles may be sitting in student support services or something like that. So that's something that QUT Library does have a little bit of a difference, but that certainly has grown unbelievably. Student learning has changed and continues to change significantly, and there's increasing role of our librarians in teaching learning and study skills, increasing role of librarians in curriculum design. That's been a big change I've noticed over the last few years, getting actively involved in how curriculum is designed for our students. And obviously, rapid changes in technology driving how students like to learn. And that continues to challenge and change. Professional, hang on, look at your notes. Research support. When I first started 8 years ago, we didn't have a separate research support section. There was one of our senior staff was pulled offline for 6 months to work on a project to look at how QUT Library could support our researchers. Today we have a full team, and today you can see with our statistics the level of services that we actually deliver in research support. So our librarians are increasing role of them teaching research skills and tools, increasing role of our librarians actively providing advice and support to our researchers. And certainly things such as open access and repository management were certainly conversations I wasn't hearing even a few years ago. Certainly seeing greater collaboration and integration across the university with other services across our time as well. I'll just say social media, I don't really need to go any further than that. That's certainly changed over the last 8 years, and this one here can talk more about it than I can. As she well knows, it's not my area of expertise. Just keep talking to me about staffing.
Can you read the microphone?
Really? I'll just hold it. Okay. Professional development. So obviously one of my passions is about ensuring that our staff are appropriately trained and trying to set them up for the future. Professional development has certainly changed over the years in terms of what people need and the constant change and me trying to have to find options to support our staff. So that continues to challenge me. I do a lot of work in looking at secondments for people, doing things such as STEP, which is what we describe as a short-term experience program where you can apply in the library to shadow someone else in the library if you want to learn more about their job. It's particularly useful for staff at the lower salary levels who would like to move up a higher level. So what type of roles, they look at what type of roles the next salary level up is doing and what type of skills that they may require. So I'm very big on professional development, and we have a lot of movement in our library, and that's primarily my reason because I allow secondments and a lot of work in that area. Technological problems? I'm good at it. Oh. Okay, so in terms of how I've seen job roles change, there's certainly been a decline in requirement for our lower skilled roles. So the lower skilled roles such as what would term our lending assistants, which we call collection access, so certainly there's been a decrease in the requirement. It makes sense. A decrease in physical collections means that we don't need as many staff to process materials, returns and those type of things. We've also seen a decline in physical resource assistants, so they're the people who work in our resources section for getting our physical materials in and into our catalogue, so we've certainly seen a change in that area. We see an increase in requirement for higher skilled and specialised roles. Some of the things in terms of general skills that I've seen really ramp up and are really needed in our staff and our managers is resilience, change management, leadership and management skills. So there's some of the things I focus on with our supervisors in terms of building the skills in those areas. So there's about 25 supervisors or managers in our libraries, across our library. Some of the other things that I've seen from our liaison librarians that they are building skills in is project management, report writing, and the ability to be able to analyse data. So there's certainly some changes I've seen over recent years about required skills. I also had a look, I had a scan back and had a look at what type of new roles have I seen come into our library over the last 8 years. So such things as a repository resource librarian, a scholarly communications librarian, data librarians, research impact librarians, and an increasing focus on people with strong information management skills. So we now have a section that simply looks at information management, and that person or those people service outside the library as well. It's not just about the library. We provide advice externally across the university. So workforce and succession planning we've already talked about, and how I've seen that certainly change over the last 8 years. What I thought I would do, because spaces is one of my key interests, is give you a look at some pictures of what our libraries used to look like. This is Kelvin Grove Library, 2010. So you will see the lovely blue carpet. You will notice that over that side it actually says loans desk, so there was a loans desk on one side and a reference desk on the other. This was our group study spaces. Whilst it had an awesome outlook, it was very 1970s. So that is what Kelvin Grove Library 2010 and before that. So this is what it looks like today. So these are our library help desk service pods on level 2 as you walk in the library. It's a much more open feel, it's much more modern look. Our desks are fixed, but I will say everything else is more flexible, the furniture is more flexible. I also say I personally collected every book on that display. Those are actual books from our collection on the ceiling of Kelvin Grove between levels 2 and 3. So you can just have a look at how the space is opened up. That used to be a solid floor. They drilled and concrete cut it through the floor, which is the awful day of my life as a project manager. But you can see the bright colours. You can see it's a much more open space. This library actually won a number of architectural awards back in 2011, 2012, and particularly for that book feature. It's called Deselection. This is Gardens Point Library. It is a little more dated than Kelvin Grove Library, but we do get occasional funding to give it an overhaul, and we've just done a little refurbishment on level 5 of Gardens Point Library, and it's only just opened in the last couple of weeks. So again, it's the same concept, to try and open up the spaces, make our furniture more flexible, make a mixture of group and individual study spaces. I can say we never have enough spaces. We never have enough spaces for students. That's a lot of the comments we get. I often say I could stick another 10 floors on any of our libraries and still people would say I don't have enough space. Okay, so Kathleen asked me to have a little chat about what does the future hold, or looking ahead, what does the future hold? I thought I'd start with looking at what the future holds in general before I talk specifically about libraries. So what will our future workforce look like? So these are some of the mega trends that are predicted. So our workforce, for the first time in history, we'll have to have up to 4 generations working at once. They all have different approaches to HR and how they like to be treated, and how do they want to work from home. So there are different perspectives on our workforces and the generations in our workforces. It is predicted that there will be skill shortages into the future. People with a broader range of skills, and this is one of my key messages of tonight, it's about having a basket of skills. It's about not pigeonholing yourself, it's about having a broad range of skills that you're able to draw on into the future. We're going to need an increasingly higher skilled workforce. We're going to need less of our middle and lower skilled workers. There is obviously, and you will see a number of studies in terms of automation. So how is automation going to affect any industry, not just library, but how is it going to affect any industry? The prediction is that the most growth is in the STEM areas, so the science, technology, engineering, mathematics. The concerning factor for Australia is most of our younger generation is not interested in pursuing a career in those areas. We'll see more rise of the contingent workforce, so people who are contractors. We'll see more entrepreneurs. We'll see people rise of the virtual worker. So you're never going to leave your house. You got all the technology you need. You can still be a valuable employee. One of the statistics I learned, it's about 12 months ago now, is that the younger generation are only staying in jobs for 2 years on average. So gone are the days where someone stayed in a job for life. It's 2 years on average. It will be not necessarily about the qualifications you have into the future, it's about the basket of skills that you've got. So what have you picked up along the way? It's not necessarily about that piece of paper, because let me tell you, I've never really used that Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry, but it's the skills I picked up along the way that has helped me get the jobs I've got today. Technology, look, it's, as you well know, it's so unpredictable. Gartner, which is obviously, Gartner is one of the world's leading information technology research and advisory companies. They've recently released some very interesting stats. So they're saying by 2018, more than 3 million workers globally will be supervised by a robo-boss. Yeah, so you've done that. By 2018, 2 million employees will be required to wear health and fitness tracking devices as a condition of employment. Let's not get started on the legalities of that. But there's, by 2018, 6 billion connected things will be requesting support. So technology is unbelievable. Big data, social media, cloud, robotics, automation, AI. So they're all things that we need to consider and how they're going to impact on our workforces. Higher education continues to change. and it will continue to change. It will become a much more tightly, I think the funding will be tighter into the future, and politics, of course, always plays a part. Students now, self-driven with some guidance. They want online options, virtual options. They want flexible options. I want to be able to do this part of this course and this part of this. So that's really, and we know that today. Certainly, there's been a lot of talk about virtual universities. No overheads, no buildings. You can just imagine what it takes to run something like QUT with its physical infrastructure. Globalisation. We are a 24/7 world, but we will be talking more about global competition for jobs. You can work for a company across the world. You can sit here, but you can be employed by a UK company. So the boundaries for employment will become quite porous. Demographics. Now, some of this is quite scary. Working until we're 70 and 80, living until we're early 100s. So we obviously have an ageing population. That will increase our burden on the workforce. We'll see a higher incidence of chronic diseases and lifestyle type diseases. Look, it's not all negative. Just I'd like to point out, it's things that we have to consider going forward. Less home ownership, fewer marriages, fewer kids. There will be a strong rural to urban shift. There's resourcing. There, of course, an increasing demand for resources, increasing competition for resources. It means we need to become clever about how we source funding as well. So that was very positive of me. So looking ahead with my crystal ball, what do I think is specific about libraries into the future? Oh, right, okay. This technology thing, I tell you. So libraries continue to be transformative. They continue to have to change. I do have a couple of quotes because I couldn't help myself. Libraries today are less about what they have for people and more about what they do for and with people. Our physical collections will continue to disappear. It will continue to decrease. Electronic resources will continue to increase, and that's a no-brainer. Space, it's predicted that more space will be required, and again, it's not about the collections, it's about spaces for students, it's about activities in spaces. More and more libraries are doing different things, and I'm going to use the word makerspace here. So they're venturing into different things than what they've done in the past. They will be used in different ways. Technology, look, who knows? There'll be increased opportunities for online learning, which means there should be increased roles of librarians in providing resources, access to resources. Research is going to continue to grow, and what librarians do to support research will continue to grow. Information management roles will continue to increase. Project work will increase. One of my passions, which I will talk about later, is project work. I cannot stress enough what project skills will do for any role. I don't care if you're a librarian, I don't care if you're an engineer. Project gives you a good grounding. Project skills gives you a good grounding. It teaches you how to look at time. It teaches you how to allocate your resources. It teaches you how to communicate and plan effectively. So I can't stress enough how valuable getting some skills in project work is. Our library workforce will need to be flexible. Online will continue to grow. The level of customer service that we provide is critical. And the quality of our customer service is critical. It's 24/7. People want service at point of need and they want good service. So libraries really need to think about how they do that effectively. I see that we will continue, I'm calling myself a librarian, I see that librarians will get more and more involved in curriculum design and educational design. That will continue to increase. And the concept of blended learning, which I haven't mentioned yet this evening, but that will also and is now very important. Our liaison librarians, for example, they can be assigned with a lead role. So our lead roles, you can have a lead role in information resources, you can have a lead role in learning and teaching, or you could have a lead role in research support. and you are that lead role for the particular team. So you might serve the education faculty, and there'll be a lead role in each of those areas. We've just changed our liaison librarian learning and teaching component to also include blended learning as a part of their lead role. Some of the skills, or the more generic skills that I see are important and will continue to be, is about being agile and open to change. A lot of people struggle with change. It's a skill or a skill set that you need to be able to effectively deal with change, and if you're a manager, it is critical that you can assist staff with change. Digital literacy, which I don't have much of, but it's important. Being able to think about the future. So future-focused thinking, that strategic thinking is critical as well. And one of the big ones for me is emotional intelligence in the workplace. Okay. Kathleen also asked me to do just a quick tips and tricks essentially on employment. So, advice. Nothing I'm going to tell you today is extraordinary, revolutionary. However, after now 10 plus years in some form of recruitment role, these are common mistakes. So some things I recommend when you're going for jobs. Do your homework. You need to research the organisation. Have a look at their strategic plan. Look at where they're going. Look at what they want to do. You also need to be sure that you can align yourself with the goals of the organisation. If you can't, you're not going to fit. You're not going to like it. So make sure that you have an understanding of their goals and you agree with them. When you get to the interview stage, practice. Think of potential questions. Talk in front of the mirror with your hairbrush. No kidding, people who walk into interviews who do not seem to have done any practice or even considered what type of questions they may be asked is unbelievable. Listen to the question being asked. Some people automatically jump to a conclusion and answer a different question because they've heard a keyword in their head. And you're like, it's not quite what was asked. Stick to the instructions when you apply for a job. If it says respond in 2 pages, respond in 2 pages. Some jobs, we get 200 applications. If you have not kept to the 2 pages, it's not even looked at. Follow the instructions. Spell check is your friend. Answer the actual question they're asking as well. Professionalism is my next point. Everything associated with recruitment and selection should be professional. Don't put photographs on your CV. Don't disclose personal information. Dress for the job you want. Do not turn up to an interview in jeans and a t-shirt. Don't ever badmouth previous employers or organisations during your interview or in any of the documentation you prepare. And be very careful and watch your body language. So watch how you're sitting. Make sure you make eye contact with people. Folded arms. It's some of the simple signals that you give to people during an interview process, because you often only see these people once and you're trying to make an impression. Fidgeting. Nervousness. Keep it under control. This is a big one I see in QUT Library. If you're currently working for the organisation and working for a particular library and you're going for another role within that same work unit, do not assume anything. A lot of our staff automatically have in their heads to say, I already work for QUT Library. You already know I'm okay. You know I do my job. You know I'm good. Don't ever assume it. You need to treat the interview process as, I've never met these people, this is the job I want. So that's a common mistake I see internally with our staff, that they automatically assume that because we know what they're like. And they may be great employees, but they don't consider what they should be doing during an interview process. Make sure you tailor your resume for each job. Don't just produce the same thing every time. Think of some intelligent questions to ask during the interview process, and don't over or under answer questions during the interview. I've sat through interviews where people just go, yep. And that's the extent of their answer. In the library world, it does become very competitive for roles. You are competing against your peers, you are competing against colleagues. That can be quite challenging for staff to have to deal with, but it is quite competitive. You need to be able to effectively sell yourself. In this day and age, your online social media presence is important. It's very important. Employers look at it. So make sure you know what's out there about you and be careful what you post. Networking is very important as well. And in Library World, networking is extraordinarily important. Networking. Take opportunities as they're presented to you. If you're faced with or you've been offered something, really consider taking up the opportunity. So if someone says to you, I'd like you to work on this project, really think about it. It gives you a good boost for your CV. It gives you another basket of skills. So really look at opportunities as they're presented to you. And I've already said one of my personal biases is about working on projects because it does give you a good grounding. So I guess the moral of the story, and it's the purpose of your lecture, is about lifelong learning is imperative. You can no longer sit back and just the degree you've got is it. You will always need to continue to learn and build your skills and your knowledge. You need to continuously improve. And I think I am going to stop speaking.
Yay. Thank you, Beth. All right, does anyone online or in the classroom have any questions? And I'll run around with the microphone. All right.
Rebecca, when you say work on projects, is that if a uni student comes to you with what they're working, what do you mean by projects? Or is it a collection you're putting together? Or?
So if your organisation might say to you, I need, I'm going to use you, we need to review our online suite of resources. It's been 4 or 5 years, they're a bit dated, they're not actually meeting the needs of our students. We would like to offer you 6 months offline to work on a particular project to get our resources up to date. So that's really what I'm focused on about within your workplace, being offered an opportunity such as a project like that and taking advantage of it. We do have other students coming in to do projects, but that you might supervise, but my preference, of course, is in building skills is to take an opportunity like that you're presented within the organisation. Yep.
Yeah, I was interested because you said that, like, in the future, people will have to be highly skilled and quite specialised. But at the same time, you said that we're also having to be sort of multi-skilled and have a broad range of skills. So it is quite hard to be very specialised and highly skilled. Yeah, so any ideas about, or insights?
You know, it's a tough question to answer, but it is.
Sorry, I'll just take over from Beck. There's a Stephanie Bradbury who's the Research Support Manager. That's her official title. So she's in charge of the research team, and she is highly specialised. Like, that research team are exactly like, they're crack ninjas. Like, you want to find out something about research, you go to them and they are onto it. But they're really specialised, but every single person in that team has also got other interests that they don't necessarily pursue at work, but they're all multi-skilled. So Katja, who some of you might have met, is still part of that team. So she's also interested in open access. So what a lot of them are is they're learning outside the job and they're learning from each other. So they have got a lot of skills. Their role might be specialised, but in a meeting, they're not sitting there going, oh yeah, this is my area, I'll just check my emails while you talk about that area. They know everything that's going on. They've got that broad range of knowledge. It's just they kind of practice specialised skills every day, if that makes sense.
Sorry. I mean, I can talk about myself. My specialised skill, or I believe my specialised skills are in the HR and finance areas. So that's my basket of skills, that's what I'm good at. But I also have developed a bigger range of skills in other areas, such as the project management, such as health and safety, and that's me, over time, learning more and getting experience in roles or doing further study. So that's sort of the basket of skills that I've got that I can draw on, which you would describe more as generalist skills, but my speciality is in that HR workforce area. Answer your question? Yes. Anyone else want to grill me? Okay.
I don't really know how to phrase the question, but I suppose, what is the difference between meeting people and actually networking? Or do you have to kind of slip in your qualification somewhere, or is it just about meeting people?
I can partially answer this. You're probably better at socialising than I am. Certainly in the lab, certainly in the library world there are a lot of activities and events and networking opportunities. State Library of Queensland, QLOC, which is the Queensland University Libraries Office of Cooperation, actually run a lot of events. So there are a lot of events that libraries do run, particularly academic libraries, and I would encourage you to go to some of those events as well. It might be training, it might be a presentation, it might be an an international visitor coming to discuss something. So you certainly can learn a lot from others. Academic libraries in particular are very friendly, and they do work well with other academic library institutions. So it's not generally a competition between us and UQ Library, for example. So I have counterparts at UQ that I'll often go and ask for advice, and I've got those through meeting them at particular library events. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Anyone online with questions? Everyone's saying thank you very much.
I'll go home then.
Thanks. I had a question about staffing levels. So you're looking at changes you've seen over the last 5 years, and especially the I guess lower skill type tasks that you might have, just the shelving and circulation type things that happen. Being more, would you say, replaced by having those more specialised roles that come in? And would you say that the staff at QUT, for example, has that increased over the last 5 years that you've been here, or have they also decreased?
Okay, good question. Whenever I have any form of vacancy in QUT Library, I will have a look at the role itself. I have a wish list of where I see things moving towards in the future. I also analyse every year about how many roles we have in particular areas. So if I have a vacancy, so for example, in library resource services, I require less physical resource assistance, and that's a known fact. I require more electronic resource assistance. So over time, I have taken the roles when they become vacant for the physical resource assistance and transitioned them into electronic resource assistance in terms of taking the funding from that role and repurposing it into, and it's a higher salary level between the physical and the electronic. So in that way, that's good workforce planning practice by looking at what my vacancies may be and repurposing that money into roles that I actually require. So we've done the same in the research area to look at, well, I need less of these type of roles, but I actually need more of these, and I need this money to get here. In terms of the total quantity of staff, it's roughly remained the same because of the way that we take our vacancies and then look at what roles are actually required. So the staffing levels have remained the same. It just changes in the staff groups.
Neil's just asked online, can he and no one else get a copy of your wish list for staffing decisions?
I'd love to, but actually I'm the only one with it. I haven't even given it to the director.
So my biggest dream is to get into a role and then just stay there for the rest of my life. When you say people are leaving after 2 years, is that usually those people's choices, or are they being moved on forcibly?
Now, just keep in mind that's just a general statistic, and it's not about libraries in particular, it's about the workforce itself. And it's just, and the way it was described to me, and I learned this at a conference, a workforce planning conference, it's the nature of that generation in terms of only really wanting to stay in a position for that long. And that's a very general statement, but that's what the statistics are saying. But yeah. So no, they're not being pushed on or moved on because they don't have the right skills. It's a matter of, it's a nature of the world we live in. Yeah.
How long do QUT staff stay at the library? I'll just ask.
Okay. So every year I have the joy of presenting our staff with years of service. Last year I presented a 40-year certificate for year of service. We weren't even called QUT then. When this person started, it was some QIT or pick a name. So we have a lot of long-term staff. We have people 30 plus years, 35 years, 40 years. So we do have a lot of staff. We don't have a particularly large turnover, so that statistic that I presented in terms of I don't have a particularly young workforce either. In turning over every 2 years does not hold true for our academic library. but we do have a lot of staff who have stayed for that long. Mm-hmm.
But I think as QUT library workforce gets older, that might change. You know, as you get new staff.
I also do age demographics and age profiling of our staff, and I think 2 years ago was really the peak for retirements in 2 of our areas, so that was a really big concern for me in the preceding years. Excuse me, because I could see in 2 of our areas the average age was 60. So that was concerning me about the loss of knowledge, and they were concentrated in 2 areas of our library. They weren't spread out. So we looked at strategies in terms of succession planning. How do I share this knowledge? What do I do? And one of those areas was particularly, for lack of a better word, specialised. So how do I get other librarians in to sort of cross those skills and that knowledge between our staff? So I think that peaked for us, I want to say 2013. But yeah, certainly do look at age. You're making me walk for it.
Just about changing roles, or changing roles, it would be more about changing positions. I know in state government there's a lot of people who are in one role for 2 years and something else comes up maybe in that department or in another department, similar level, and so they move across to there. So not necessarily a different employer, but a different role. And that would happen too in the library from what you say.
Yes,
yes.
we do have a lot of movement.
Yes.
I mean, I think we certainly do have a lot of internal movement within the library, and it is part of my strategy to ensure that my library advisors, which are can step up to liaison librarian role. So it's a transition through their career, and it is a planned transition through their career to go from a salary level linked at 4/5 up to 6/7 for liaison, and if they have management aspirations then they can step up to the 8. So to do that, one of the ways we do that is to provide secondment backfill opportunities for staff who go on long service leave or recreation leave. So we actively encourage that type of transition, and we've purposely designed the staffing structure so you have a step. You can move in that way if you so choose.
Thank you.
Sorry. Beck, can I just ask about opportunities for students in your library? What sort of things do you have set up for us, and is it possible for us to come and do placements at your library?
We do offer fieldwork placements. We are quite popular. No, we do offer fieldwork placements. Our staff development officer does look after our fieldwork placements, and there is a page on QUT Library's website which provides details about fieldwork placements. So we do have a lot of those, and we've started already. We've got lots of people for semester 1, and that's in any area of our library. If you want to work in one of our branch libraries or down in Library Resource Services in the research support team, we do offer fieldwork placements for our students.
So thank you. All right. Thanks again to Beth. That was awesome. And as I said, I really appreciate her taking time out from her day to come and talk to us at the end of a long day. So we'll let you go now, Beck. Thank you. All right. And the check's in the mail. Yeah, I was going to say the beer's in the mail. We'll have it with a meal so that it is responsible drinking, because we're at QUT at work time and premises, and we will not be having it during work. Thanks, Beck. See you later. Thank you. All right, does everyone just want a short break to stretch their legs for 5 minutes? Yeah? Okay. So I'm just going to mute the microphone. Okay, I'm just going to mute the microphone, everybody online, so that we haven't gone anywhere. It's just muted. All right, so is everyone online? Can you hear me again? It's Kathleen this time. My voice is probably, I've got less dulcet tones. Okay, cool. I'm glad you can hear. All right, so we'll come back. So does anyone want to ask me any questions that they didn't want to ask Beck about what Beck just said? I used to work for QUT Library. So if you've got any questions that you either just thought of then or you thought, oh, I'm not really sure how to phrase that to Beck, you can ask me. Okay, so that question was what kind of skills would a research librarian need? You need to be a ninja. So the research librarians, and this is a really interesting role within QUT Library because as Beck said, it's really new. And if you look at where higher education is focusing right now, and libraries I think across the board, I think that research librarian roles are only going to grow and are only going to get bigger. So basically that role is about helping researchers. So a lot of it is helping PhD students, you know, and it will be things from, oh my God, I can't find any information on blah, and helping them find that, to stuff like, well, where should I publish? What's the best thing? What's my, you need to know a lot of stuff about, and I can't think of the word, impact factor. So impact factor, so when you're a researcher and you apply for an ARC grant or anything like that, they want to know what your impact factor is. They want to know how much you've published, how valuable you are. So researchers will come to librarians and say, where should I publish? How am I going to get the best impact factor? Can you help me work out my analytics? Can you help me work out, you know, my altmetrics is a big one. So altmetrics is like another way of measuring. Does everyone know what impact factor is? I'm just throwing jargon out, aren't I? That's a bit ridiculous. Okay, so impact factor is when I publish a journal article, all journals are ranked. So Nature, everyone knows the journal Nature, the big one, or the is it the Harvard New Medical one? They are like gold journals. So if you publish in them, then your impact factor is really high because it's a really high quality journal. So when you publish, researchers have to select where to publish really carefully, because the better the publication, the higher your impact factor. The higher your impact factor, the more likely are you to get a promotion, to get the government to give you money to do more research. So impact factor is really important. There's a bit of a shift in higher education happening, kind of, caused by two things, and these are all things research librarians need to know about. So you need to know about impact factors. You need to know about open access and open access repositories. So ePrints is a really good example of that. So if you haven't gone to ePrints, go and check it out. So this is a really interesting debate about open data and who owns research, which I could spend a lot of time on, but I won't. So I'll just break it down for you briefly, and I'm going to give you all my own opinion here. If you disagree with me, that's fine. But this is what I think. So I am going to do a research project about how to stop breast cancer. And I say to the government, give me $2 million. And the government goes, there you go, here's your $2 million. And I say, thank you very much. And I spend 4 years with a research team putting together all this stuff. And then what happens to the results of my research? I publish them in a really high impact journal because I want a high impact factor, and it's behind a paywall. So for anyone to get access to that journal, they've got to pay a subscription fee and subscribe to that journal. And that could be tens of thousands of dollars. See, now I think that that's not okay, because I'm a taxpayer, so I've given the government the money to pay that researcher to do the research, so that's actually my research. I think as a taxpayer, I should be able to see what's in those journals. But the publishing model doesn't work like that, neither does the journal model. Journals have got to make money. What do they need to make money? They need subscriptions. So if you get thanks for answering that question, Kaz, as well. If you get if you get Martin Borchert, who's in the Library Secretariat as well, to come in and talk to you about how much QUT Library actually spends on journal subscriptions every year, you'll probably fall off your chair. It's amazing. Harvard's actually, the Harvard budget is huge, and journals are jacking up their prices all the time. So I think that's a broken and a flawed model. So what we're trying to move towards is open access. So open access means, an open access journal means that anybody can access that research. Anyone can go and look at it. But therein lies the tension when you're a researcher, because part of you wants everyone to see it, because my research is really important and I want everybody to see it. But if I publish it in an open access and it's not gold star, how am I going to get my promotion? So it's a real tension for researchers. Hence, we have ePrints. What's ePrints? ePrints, or any university repository, is the way we get around that. So ePrints, when you work for QUT, every journal article that you publish, you are required to put on ePrints. And I say required to, but everyone wants to do it anyway. So you're required to put it on ePrints, and so ePrints is the repository of every academic in QUT's, all their research papers, and they're available, open access, free, da-da-da-da. And they get around that very cleverly by saying things like, this is the final draft version of the article that's going to be published in blah blah journal. So there's ways and means of getting around it. And ePrints is a really important repository. So research librarians also need to know about ePrints. They need to know about other university repositories. You need to know a lot about copyright, because some of the bigger journals are wising up and going, nope, you can't put it in ePrints. Or you can put... Yep, they might want exclusive, or they might say, you can have it in ePrints. We're publishing it in May 2016. You can put a citation in ePrints saying it's in our journal, and in May 2017 you can put the actual article up there. So until then you can just put the citation, so people have still got to come to our journal. So research librarians are constantly not only helping with the actual physical research and going, all right, you need to know about, I don't know, I mean, some of the education students or some of the creative industry students, those creative industries librarians are looking, people are doing PhDs on dance and finding these amazing things. So you have to you have to be a ninja in that you have to be able to find stuff, but you also need to help researchers navigate this kind of copyright publishing and all that type of thing. So you need to be knowledgeable about open access, about research, about a whole raft of things to be a research librarian. And that is where I think academic librarians are all going to go in the future. There's going to be more and more research. Sorry, what did you want to ask, Peter?
Slightly off topic, but on the topic of journals and stuff, I've heard that with open access, some of the open access journals, because they don't have subscribers and stuff like that, you as a researcher who wants to publish in it, you might have to pay to have your thing published in there. And also, if you do get published in one of those gold standard type journals, they don't pay you for your contribution. That's not very nice.
No, nobody pays you for writing a journal article. Well, your company does. QUT pays me for writing journal articles, obviously, it's part of my job. You're right, some open access journals will ask you to pay to publish. That's the pay to publish model. And that's something you have to be really careful of, because when the first pay to publish thing first came out, it was only like the dodgy brothers that were asking you to do that. So, that was really bad. Now some more reputable open access journals are starting to move towards it. But the research support librarians run whole seminars on stuff like this for students, because what happens is, so when you finish your PhD, and this will happen to me one day when I finish it, I'm only joking, hopefully this will happen to me, these companies go through and they look at all the PhDs published at a university in a certain year and they go, rightio, there's been 100, I'm going to send an email to all these people offering to turn their PhD into a book. And people go, oh, yeah, because like I spent 5 years or something writing that, I want everyone to read it. And then they say, we'll publish it. You just need to sign this contract and don't look at the fine print too closely. And you have to pay for the printing. And so it's a way of trapping you. So research librarians then have to run seminars about things like looking to publish your PhD. Here's how not to get stung into paying all this money. So yeah, so the research librarian role is really varied. I mean, a large percentage of it is actual research and helping people come up with search strategies. And it helps, you guys will all have to do a project as part of your course, and that's really helpful. Because when you talk about stuff like formulating a research question and doing all those sorts of things, it's much easier to do if do you know what I mean? Like if you've done it yourself and you've stepped through the process, you kind of get a view of where everyone's coming from. And if I've got one piece of advice for you, it's try and publish out of your projects or try and publish somewhere, because the best way to see how journals work is to kind of do it firsthand and to publish an article if you can. And it's really not that hard to do. I'm not saying aim for a gold star or anything like that, But if you can publish, it's really valuable, not just for your resume, but also because if you're interested in being a research librarian, you kind of get it from the inside, you still get it from the inside point of view. And yeah, Karen, you're right, pay to publish still has a bad rap in some areas, medicine. So it just depends, and that's the sort of thing research librarians are like, they're all over that sort of stuff. Open access, all that sort of stuff. So if you're doing emerging technologies with me this semester, Katja was a member of that research team. She's at SLQ at the moment, but her substantive role is back here at QUT Library. And she knows a lot of stuff, and that research team, they're like crack guns. And they're also really fun, so a good place to do a placement too. All right, so any other questions? All right, I'll get started with my, I'll just wait, with my lecture, which isn't half as exciting as Beck's, really. So, lifelong learning. So what's learning? The acquisition of knowledge or skills through study, experience, or being taught. I thought that was just a nice sort of little definition to get us started, because that's what learning is. Getting some new knowledge, finding out some new stuff. And I like this because it's study, experience, or being taught. Because obviously we're studying. I think we get a lot of our knowledge through experience, just through experiencing something, which is what I was just saying about publish a journal article, and you kind of get this whole new insight. Experience networking, experience on social media, experiencing watching other people doing things, and being taught. I don't think there means being taught like in a classroom. I think that to me being taught means being taught on the job, formally or informally, just kind of watching how other librarians do it and watching how they, like I was like at first, well, I'm just going to watch what you all do and then copy that exactly, and hopefully nobody will know I've got no idea what I'm doing. And it kind of worked for me until I had some idea what I was doing, and someone told me that they were copying me, and I was like, oh, thank God, I finally made it. I'm finally a real librarian. Some other librarian's going, oh, she seems to know what's going on. So what's the point of lifelong learning for librarians? And I defer to Beck in this matter. She's seen it. Like, she's seen, and what I really hope that you learn from that lecture is the way that academic libraries have changed so greatly even in the past 5 years. Like, they are massive changes, and there continue to be massive changes. The Academic Skills Advisory Service, does everyone know what that is? So the Academic Skills Advisors, they're the place, the Academic Skills Advisors are the people that you go to if you want help with academic skills. So if you want help with your writing, note-taking, they do stuff around reading, and speed reading is not the word I'm looking for, but like focused reading. They do all these amazing academic skills. They never used to do that. QUT Library used to have 2, now there's about 10, so that's massive. You know, that's a massive change in the QUT Library staff. There used to be a couple across the whole library, now there's 1 in every team that goes out and speaks to academics about curriculum design. So that's a brand new role that's only just coming into being. Same with research. Yes, they are very nice, Kaz. You should make them your best friends. So that's why I'm saying I defer to Beck, because those roles are changing so much. The collection access team used to be massive. So collection access are the people that actually look after the physical books, so the shelving of the books, doing all those sorts of things. There used to be there used to be a massive team. Now the team's really small. It's really small. If you look on YouTube, you can see UTS, the Library of the Future. They've got a little robot that brings you your book from down in the stacks out the back. So libraries are changing. Like, they really are. Even, when I worked at QUT Library, stuff changed. All the liaison librarian roles change. If you work in a library, get used to change, because every 2 to 3 years, everything changes. So a lot of libraries used to have, academic libraries used to have this model where they'd have half like research librarians and half teaching and learning librarians. And so everybody did that for a few years, and then everybody merged back together and went, no, we'll just have 1 librarian and you do research and teaching and learning. And now they're kind of splitting apart again. But they might come back together. So even when you're in a library, everything changes continually just to try and keep up with things. So that's why I think lifelong learning is so important in this profession, because things just change all the time. And same with public libraries. Public libraries are changing all the time. Like, there's no, they look different, they are different, they've got different programs, they've got different things. Look at the different programs that SLQ puts on. Depending on who's in government, there might even be a Premier Literary Awards. Do you know what I mean? Like, things just change all the time in every single library because of technology. Just think about what Beck said about the PowerPoints. When I did my undergraduate degree, we wrote in pen and paper. That was a long time ago. I might only look 19, but I'm actually older. So I think it's really important to just keep that in mind. So what kind of learning is there? So there's formal learning, which is kind of like this. Not very interesting, me just talking. There's informal learning, which I think is a lot more fun because you just kind of, you know, that's where I think social media can play a really big part, or maybe learning on the job just from your colleagues. And then there's lots of other kind of learning that we don't have time to talk about now. I was going to talk about informed learning tonight, but then I thought, no, nobody wants to hear that. But informed learning and information literacy are really important concepts to librarians as well. So I'll leave it at that, but if anyone wants to talk to me about those things later, you'll come across them in your degree, but they're really important because one of the things librarians do is kind of teach people how to learn. Does that make sense? So we teach people how to find information in information literacy, because information literacy is about people having the skills to find the right information at the right time. And informed learning is about them actually using that information in a way that will help them become lifelong learners. So these are all fun things that librarians get to do. Woohoo! Yeah. So, formal learning. So what kind of formal learning is there? So again, this is like all the boring stuff that nobody really wants to know. So there's university learning, obviously here. Professional development. There's lots and lots of professional development stuff that you can attend for free. SLQ has stuff all the time. Is anyone here a member of the ALIA New Grads or the ALIA? Yeah? Yay! And have you been to stuff that they've taught you? Oh, ALIA is the Australian Library and Information Association. They are your new best friends, really. So ALIA is the peak body, usually to get, well, not to get any role, but you have to be ALIA accredited, even if you're not a member of ALIA. So for us to teach a library qualification, we've got to be an ALIA accredited course. For you to get a library job, you have to show that your qualification has been approved by ALIA. You can get student membership. You can get student membership at ALIA. You don't have to sign up to be a member, but I would advise signing up to the e-list and getting along to some of those free professional development stuff they put on. They put on like lots of networking functions and stuff like that, which are really, really handy. Did anyone look at the? I think I put online the ALIA, you know, statement on professional development, and did anybody think that that was useful? No one's venturing an opinion. Okay, so good. So you guys had a look. Did anyone think anyone think that it was valuable? The ALIA statement on professional development. No, it's all right. It's hard to remember.
I think it's valuable that that lifelong learning's been recognised by the professional organisation, because if you're going into a workplace, you want your managers to go, yeah, it's okay for you to do lifelong learning. So it's so valuable that it's recognised by the professional organisation.
I agree. Anyone else? So it looks consistent. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of groups that put out these kind of statements. I guess it's how libraries seem to walk the talk a little bit better than most. Yeah, so they do. And as Sarah's saying, the ALIA website's pretty good. So sign up for the ALIA e-list. So there's that type of stuff. There's workplace training that you can go on. Some ALIA stuff I would consider formal learning, like you can go to ALIA sort of lectures or ALIA in conversation with, and they'll have a stuff. Conferences, I think they fit into formal and informal learning. Some of my best learning at conferences has been on the dance floor. So conferences, obviously all the presentations at conferences are a good time to really get some knowledge, because all the presenters at library conferences, some of the stuff that you hear, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that library's doing that. Every time I go to a library conference, I always hear something and go, how did anyone think to do that? Why has nobody thought of doing that service before? How can we copy it? That sort of stuff. And then MOOCs. And MOOCs are an interesting one, whether you count them as formal or informal learning. I'll admit this, I am a MOOC signer-upper, and I never finish them because I think I'll definitely have time for that, and then I never get back to it. So has anyone else done that with a MOOC, like signed up in a fit of enthusiasm and then gone, MOOC is a massive open online course.
Oh, yeah, I've signed up.
Yeah, you've signed up and not done it? Yep. So, oh, you finished one. Yeah, we've got someone that finished. Woohoo! Yeah, okay, so that's the ratio. Sign up for 50, complete one. Yeah, they are. I mean, they are really useful if you've got the time to do them and if you've got the time to invest in them. So a couple of librarians I know have done some and have found them useful. So they are a really good option if you are in a workplace that perhaps doesn't have enough money to send you to a lot of things, or you don't have enough money to do professional development. It's a good way to do it when you are, if they can't afford to pay for you to go to another course, you might even be able to get some time back at work to do your MOOC. I've said... Yes, yeah, it does. But I think with MOOCs, the other thing is they're formal, but I think a lot of that's informal learning because it's about that connected learning and meeting people. So I think with MOOCs, a bit of it is learning what you learn from the lectures and a bit of it's learning from what you learn on your peers online. So I think that's really important. So there's sort of that professional learning. Yeah?
I think there's been a bit of a change in MOOCs. Sorry.
Yep.
I think there's been a bit of a change I've noticed in MOOCs where they're starting to move a bit more to leaving them online and having them open for people to do, whereas it started off being you had to do it between this date, and if you didn't, you know, you missed a week, you were out of it. So I think they're getting a bit easier to...
More flexible.
Yeah, more flexible, and you can come back to them, you know, when you need them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they have to because I mean, the whole idea of MOOCs and the whole way that university, the higher education sector is going and the influence MOOCs have and the tension between them is like a whole lecture in itself. But if anyone's interested in MOOCs or when you get to doing your research project interested in MOOCs, it's a really fascinating area and how higher education is responding to them and how they're going to change the way higher education is offered. I think it'll be a really interesting development in the near future. So that's kind of your formal learning, which isn't really that exciting because you probably kind of already knew that. So informal learning. So I've put here MOOCs and conferences again and some ALIA stuff because I think that's all informal learning. And like Beck said before and like I said, networking, the library profession is so small. It is so small. Like not as in there's only, you know, 10 of us. There's a lot more, but everyone knows everyone. Oh, yeah, you know, oh, yeah, oh, you know, oh. Everybody knows everybody. So networking's really, really important, and I hate networking. Like, I really like having a chat and just, you know, having a chat, but I'm not particularly good at, hi, I'm Kathleen, and let me tell you how awesome I am. I'm not good at that. I hate it. I just feel like an idiot when I do it. But it's really important to get out there and network. And I don't think I've ever had a networking conversation where I've told someone, hi, let me tell you what skills I've got. But by talking to people and just generally discussing, and then you get round to work and what you do comes up, it's easier to lead into it and people realise what I can do.
Just a quick one. When you say you don't like it, is that generally an Australian thing? Because I know we live in the States and it's very much, you know, go team, rah. Yeah. Whereas Australian, you're the cringe. So do you find that, or is it more?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there are some. I mean, it's been really interesting for me. One thing I learned is some people do it really well. So I think part of it is Australian. But one of the most interesting things I ever went to was I went to this like new graduates thing. No, we weren't even graduates. We were students. And I got selected by, you know, like they gave, I can't remember how many. Anyway, I went with this SLQ manager. We all got buddied up with someone important. So I went with this important SLQ manager who is, like, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going with her. She's amazing. And really, really lovely lady. Now I know her personally. I'm like, what was I so scared of? But on the night, I could barely speak to her because I was like, well, what do I say? I don't want to sell myself. I sound like an idiot. Oh my God. And so me and a couple of the other students just ended up having a few quiet drinks with some of the other managers quietly in the background. But it was amazing to watch some other people there that had these amazing network skills and were able to go up and go, hi, this is what I do, this is where I want a job, this is my online profile. And I guess my moral of the story is I could never do that, and if I tried to do it, I would both look and sound like a complete idiot. But I think the people that did it had no better or worse success than I do now. And I'm actually good friends with someone who I consider an amazing networker who can do that sort of stuff. We graduated at the same time, and we're in pretty much, like we've actually, like obviously I'm doing something different now because I'm working in academia, but while we were in libraries, we were always at the same level of job. So I don't think that my networking, which was just, oh my God, did you see that on the weekend? How ridiculous, blah, 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 how's the weather? Yeah, let's have a chat, was any more or any less effective than hers. Because I think people still realise that I had the same skills when I talked about work. It just took me longer to get there because I had to have a bit of, yeah, Sarah, you can network without networking. And it does depend on your extroversion skills. Because it just takes me longer to get there. I need to know about your dog and your kids and what you like doing on the weekend before I can tell you about anything else. And that's just the way I work. And Kaz, talking about extroversion, everyone expects libraries to be full of introverts, and we're all, you know, that prim and proper and quiet. And it's just not true. Like, it's just not true. There's lots of extrovert librarians. There's lots and lots of extrovert librarians. And if you get the chance, go to a librarian conference. It is a cracker. But let me tell you, when they call drinks and when the dance floor opens, stand back. Stand back. You will get mauled in the crush. It is out of control. Like, it really is. The last librarian conference I went to, I think everyone stayed up till like 3 a.m. dancing. And then a few of us got up and did 7K jogs at 7 a.m. the next morning because we thought that was a good idea. And I must say that there was like, you know, like I'd had 3 glasses of wine all night. So I just did that for the fun of it. Because there's a lot of people like that in the library world. There's a lot of really high energy people that might not be extroverts. But one thing you'll find about libraries is people are really passionate. Like when I was talking before about the open access, and I was saying, how dare they? That's my money that funded that research. Librarians tend to be passionate about stuff like that, like passionate about open access or passionate about privacy. And I think that's where it comes from, and that's another way to network, is to find that common passion and to go, yeah, that's unbelievable. Like when Campbell Newman scrapped the literary awards, there was a lot of bonding in the library world over our shared outrage that he could, you know, he could scrap them. Yeah, so you are among friends. It's really good. And then I guess the other big thing here is social media. And that's kind of what I really want to talk about for a little while. So I know we've had some discussion on the Google Plus community about Kim Tyree's video, the networked professional. Has anybody had a chance to follow Kim on Instagram or on Twitter? Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone? So who's been following Kim for more than one day? Yep. You follow her on Twitter. Okay. And can you just tell me, and like, just what you sort of think about what Kim posts?
She posts a lot of arty stuff, graffiti in Melbourne when she was living in Melbourne. It's quite a lot of personal stuff. It's not nothing career orientated really.
Yep, I agree. Anyone else? I'll come across here.
I must admit, after I watched the video, I sort of procrastinated a bit watching her ukulele songs on YouTube, like an hour, and I loved that you could go from something that was so kind of professional to ukulele solos.
Exactly. Okay, yep.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with the pictures of her tattoos.
Yes. Okay, so Kim has, as we all know, if you follow her on Instagram and Twitter, and I know, yeah, her tattoos are awesome. I've seen them in the flesh. And if you ask her to show them to you, she will. She's very happy to. So I know Kim. She's lovely. Really, really nice. If you ever get the chance to have a chat to her, absolutely beautiful, but very quiet. So her Twitter and her Instagram personality are not what you get when you meet Kim in real life. She's actually, seems almost quite shy when you first meet her. I was like, but Kim, we're all friends. I've been following you on Twitter for years. So yeah, so really, really interesting. So Kim is the university librarian. I'm just looking for the air conditioning button. Is it around here? Feels like it's gone off. Oh, sorry. So Kim's the university librarian at the Auckland University of Technology. And before that, she was the university librarian at Swinburne. So the university librarian is like the top dog, the boss. And Kim has done all this. Just wait and see if the aircon comes back on. Sorry for everyone online. Kim has done all this on Instagram, singing songs to her ukulele, writing tiny poems, showing us tattoos, doing all these things. Absolutely, she's done all that. Now, does anyone follow Sue Hutley on Twitter? Anyone? Okay. Anyone online follow Sue? I'll just wait and see. Okay, so I am also friends with Sue Hutley. I'll make that disclosure now. Sue Hutley is the university librarian, or we call her the Director of Library Services at QUT. Sue doesn't have a public Instagram account. Sue has a Twitter account that's public and you can follow her there. So Sue and Kim, both highly successful, both really nice, extremely different. Sue on social media posts purely professionally. I think you would be hard pressed to go back through Sue's Twitter feed and find anything that's personal. I mean, there might be vaguely personal stuff, like I'm sure, I haven't checked today, but I'm sure she would have posted something about International Women's Day, or she might in a tweet just, you know, but it would be very difficult, whereas Kim's much more stream of consciousness and, you know, I'm doing this, I'm going for a run, I'm looking at this graffiti, I'm looking at this art, and Sue's not. And I guess that they're, yeah, Sue's also great to follow because she gives a very, very good career and Sue's got her finger on the pulse of the library world just as much as Kim has. So both very good to follow, but really interesting difference. That both these people are at the peak of their, like they can't get any higher, but they are so radically different in the way that they present themselves on social media. So I think that says something about libraries. I really do. Oh good, I'm glad you're following Sue. So I think sometimes we look at these things and we kind of go, oh, you know, I wouldn't do that on Twitter because I wouldn't do that and I wouldn't do that. And I'm not suggesting that anybody goes out on Twitter, because I've actually got a bad story about Twitter as well as my good ones, on Twitter or Instagram and puts everything out there. And I'm not suggesting that you do that. It's also about where you feel comfortable. I don't share anything public, just so you know where I don't share anything public at all. I don't show you photos of my kids. I don't want anyone to follow me on Instagram. Twitter's my only public account, and I never post privately on Twitter, ever. I've got a very firm line in the sand, and that works really well for me. Other people can do what they want, but that's me. But I think it shows in the library world that we actually are pretty open to people being maybe, you know, outspoken or a bit different, but, and I'll qualify this with a but. So Kate Davis and I did some really interesting research, and we did a research project on librarians on Twitter, and I'm just going to show you these the results. So what we did, because we thought it was a good idea at the time, shaking my head now in how did I think that was a good idea at the time. Kate convinced me is how I thought it was a good idea at the time. We did a presentation at VALA, which is a library conference, and we thought to ourselves, we won't write a journal article, no, we'll create a social media story, because that will be really good. And it was, but it was a hell of a lot of work. So don't ever do that, that's my tip for you. I mean, do it, but it's hard. So what we did is we did a thing, is it tweet-worthy? And what we wanted to research about is how LIS, Library and Information Science professionals, use of Twitter. And we wanted to see how people create professional identities and how this relates to their identity at work. So we basically stalked librarians. We asked them if we could stalk them first, and then we sort of did a bit of a breakdown. So we wanted to find out, and the way that it started, and these are Kate's tweets from the presentation. So not only did we present this on a social media platform, Kate live tweeted the presentation as I was talking, and people tweeted back at us during the presentation, which we then responded to and then curated so that we all had it for eternity. It was really good. It started because I did a lot of research into how public libraries used Twitter, and I found this really interesting stuff about what public librarians said about using Twitter. And I thought, oh, we've got to look into some personal thing. So what we found, and let's see if we can, and if you want to look at this Storify, you can. There's a little video there. I think I recorded that. So let's see if I can click on this. Is it going to let me bring it up? Okay, so here are the insights. I hope you can see them. We are librarians. Hear us roar. Librarians as professionals, even if you have separate lives, as I do on social media, so personal, professional, in my personal Twitter account, on my personal Facebook and my personal Instagram, actually I never use Facebook because I hate it, it's a different story. In my personal accounts, I'm still a librarian. And if you talk to any librarian, you just can't help yourself. Like, you just can't. You just need to share some stuff with people, like the rort that is journals, or, you know, come on, let's all help school libraries, or things like that. There's a massive crossover. So even when you draw the line, your friends are going to get sick of you banging on about it. So it's really interesting. Librarians really identify strongly as being librarians. It's something the profession's really proud of, which is a nice profession to be coming into, that we all want to be there. We are librarians. Hear us talk about cats. So we do conduct our identities on Twitter around professional stuff, but there is still a lot of cat talk and general talk about what's going on. So people will still put in some soft stuff because they kind of want to do that. So even though I've said I've got a really hard line between personal and professional, that means I'll never tweet about my children, ever. But I will tweet about my cats. And I will tweet about, I was tweeting with someone the other day about the chocolate I was eating. I was like, oh my God, I'm just sick of writing this paper. I'm just going to eat chocolate, because then other people get to know that, you know, oh my God, she's not just tweeting boring tweets about come and do this. There's actually a bit of real me mixed in. It's just only part of the real me that I'll do. So work and life collide. And this was really interesting. So we have this thing called context collapse. So context collapse is where I guess the easiest way to explain it is you kind of forget what stage you're on. Does that make sense? So when you're on a stage performing and you have all these people in front of you, you know, like I'm in this classroom now, so I've got you guys in front of me, so I'm not going to start telling you about the Hogwarts Lego that I spent 8 hours finding pieces for, and my ungrateful children didn't even say thank you, because that would be inappropriate. But that's because I can see you. I can talk about Hogwarts after this. God, it was like a nightmare. I have got Lego bruises all over my knees. But when you're on something like Twitter, you forget what context you're in, because even though you might have 500 followers, I'm only looking at you two, because these are the only people talking to me. So that you forget that your boss is listening, and that your mother-in-law's listening, and that everyone else is listening, and your context collapses. You can't remember what space you're in, and librarians do that an awful lot. They kind of just, like, there are big networks on Twitter, and then there seem to be little people engaging in these conversations, and you forget that you're posting for an audience of 500 and just start posting to that audience of 20. So that was something really interesting that we found. There was a real context collapse, and we sort of forgot what stage we were on. Sharing is caring. Oh, sorry, the sound's dropping in. Just let me know. Hopefully that can be fixed. Sharing is caring. We love sharing stuff. There's like 1,001 retweets and everything like that. And if you ask for help on Twitter, you're guaranteed to get it. I once gave a presentation which was called How to Do Your PhD the Lazy Way. And basically, you just go to Twitter and ask someone. And they'll give you the answer. Not for your whole PhD, if only that was possible. But people would always help you. And there's actually, to show you how helpful Twitter is and the way social media is disrupting academic libraries in particular, if you search the hashtag IHAS, H-A-Z, IHAS the PDF or IHAS PDF, it's where people are circumnavigating journal paywalls and getting other people to provide them with the PDFs from the journals they can't access. So you go in and you put your reference and you say, I want Jones and Smith, research on blah, blah, IHAS the PDF, and people following that hashtag will download it from their journal and give it to you. It's illegal, but there you go.
I was about to say, I feel like, and I can't actually give specifics, but I feel like I read a case not too long ago where a lady had made a lot of articles from medical journals public, and from what I last read, she was potentially facing a lot of money in copyright kind of fines.
Yeah, it's not the best idea, but people do it. And usually they won't go after, you know, I think if you're doing it a lot, they'll probably go after you, but people do it all the time. So, you know, librarians like to share, not only with PDFs, but all those types of things. In my professional opinion, I don't really have an opinion. People don't really like to share controversial stuff, but no one wants to sort of say, oh, I know this or I know that. And the other interesting thing we found, and this sort of comes into opinions as well, is, and this comes into social media generally. So what I was saying before about context collapse. So I think you would be hard-pressed to walk into a library, and I don't expect anyone to out themselves here if this is not the place, but I think it would be hard-pressed to go in there, into any library, and go, oh my God, I love Tony Abbott. That man is incredible. What he did for this country, amazing. I love Tony. And not have everybody in the room just go, what are you on about? So I think if you do love Tony Abbott, that's fine, and that is a fine thing to have. Fine thing, I'm not saying that about opinions, but usually librarians are left-wing. They are, we're all Labor voting. We all like Greens, we all like the environment, we all like open access, we all like sharing and caring. So when you look at that, the opinions that are getting shared becomes that Twitter echo chamber. So they did some research on American elections, and people, like Democrats follow Democrats, follow Democrats, follow Democrats, so that everybody goes, oh yeah, well, Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and they never look at the other side of the media, because why would they follow? Like, why would I follow Alan Jones? I would never follow Alan Jones. I mean, I'm sure maybe he's got something worthwhile to say. I'm just never going to follow him and find out. So it becomes that echo chamber, and that's a bit like what Twitter is like for librarians sometimes. So people are willing to share controversial things, but really in the library world it's not controversial. So maybe if I walked into, I'm trying to think of anybody I know who doesn't work in an industry where Tony Abbott is popular. Is popular, yeah, that's what. So maybe if I walked into someone else's company and went into, oh, my sister-in-law is a partner in a law firm, I'm sure that some of my opinions, they would all go, who is your sister-in-law? Get her out of here. But in the library world, they're very safe opinions to have. So librarians will tweet about things like euthanasia, they'll tweet about abortion, they'll tweet about politics, because they're all assuming everyone's on the same side as them. And I think it must be scary for the librarians that actually are Tony Abbott voters, or actually are something that's not the accepted norm in librarianship. But when I say the accepted norm in librarianship, I'm not talking about the accepted norm. You know what I mean? Like, I think you need to think of those. You need to think of it as having more than just white male-dominated industry, because it's not. It's not like that at all. It's a heavily female-dominated profession, and it's a lot of left-wing people. So your controversial opinions that would be controversial in a more business setting aren't controversial in the librarian world.
I was going to say, be careful if you are a public servant like me, and you aren't kind of allowed to have an opinion in the public space, or you probably don't want to sign off with where you're working or something like that. Yes. Yeah. Kind of thing. Or even when you're at work, perhaps, like, it's hard to keep your opinions to yourself, but you have to keep a lid on it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's really true. And I know QUT Library, I did the training in social media, because it's a very hard thing, because you want to have an opinion, but then you don't want to, as you say, you don't want to lose your job over your opinion at all. So I think that, and it's really hard. Where do you draw the line? And I have to say, losing my job actually is not the reason why I don't tweet personally. I'm not particularly worried about that, which is probably a bit of a research case in itself that I should be thinking about. But that's not one of my main things, because I will tweet about controversial topics, such as, like politics and things like that. But so it's very interesting. Twitter's a whole other place of drawing the line.
Like defunding Trove.
Yes. I've already tweeted about defunding Trove. Yes. So you have to think about where you're tweeting for in the library world. So that's sort of my professional. The virtual tea table, we tweet to build relationships, but our main finding was that Twitter is full of win, even when it's also full of cat talk. And the reason that we actually found that, the reason that we thought that, was because even if you're talking about stuff that is not, highbrow, work-related stuff, you're still talking to people, you're still actually creating relationships. Oh, no, we don't want that, do we? You're still creating relationships, and you're still doing all those types of things. So it's really important. Sorry, my technology's broken. I'll see if I can go back through another way. It's really important to sort of try and be on top of social media in some way, shape or form, because you do learn a lot from there. Like, you really will learn an awful lot from Twitter if you take the time to go on there. Now, if you hate Twitter, then, that's okay. if you hate Twitter, then don't, that's okay, you don't have to go on it. But make sure you conference, make sure you network, and make sure that you have a bit of an idea in your head about where you want to draw the line. My bad Twitter story, if anyone wants to hear it, is 2 librarians in America, and you can Google this for all the details. I won't go into them here because I don't want to get sued, accused another librarian of sexual harassment in America. And the whole thing played out over Twitter. Like the whole thing, it got very ugly and very nasty about that. And the gentleman in question, like his reputation suffered, everything suffered. And then there's now been a full retraction of those accusations. And now the 2 women that tweeted them in the first place are subsequently, it's affected their personal careers as well. I mean, their professional careers as well. So, yes, Twitter is one of those things. If you're thinking of going into any of those platforms, I think they're great for learning. I think they're so good because you can really learn a lot and you can pick up a lot of great tips, but also just be aware of, don't tweet while drunk. I don't know, like, don't tweet when you're really cranky, all those sorts of things. Don't ever let it use it to blow off steam or anything like that. Like, instead go home and yell at your cat rather than yelling abuse on Twitter.
I was going to recommend a book by John Ronson called If You've Been Publicly Shamed, I think it's called.
Okay, yeah.
Which is just all about those kind of Twitter controversies where somebody's tweeted something and then all of a sudden it blows up and destroys their life.
Yeah. Yes. So I don't want to put you off using it because for the librarian community, it's really, really important to be in somewhere. Like, to be in places like that is invaluable. The first time I was there, I went to a conference. I knew so many people there because I'd been on Twitter, and I kind of recognised them and they knew who I was, and it was just a really easy way of getting to know people and to finding out what people do. So yeah, and it can be a bit wild, wild west. So don't be afraid of getting off it either. Like, I have Twitter breaks, self-imposed Twitter breaks every now and then, because I get a bit sick of it. Okay. All right. So social media, we've sort of talked about that, where, why, and how. And the other places that you can sort of think about is LinkedIn. Is anyone, I mean, I use LinkedIn. I don't use LinkedIn to the best. I'll be, is that the title, If You've Been Publicly Shamed? Neil's just asking.
I think it's So You've Been Publicly
Shamed. So You've Been Publicly Shamed, we think is the title. And then, why would you do it? Well, obviously for learning, benefits, networking. But thinking about where, I mean, LinkedIn is so much more valuable than I don't use LinkedIn properly. I'm very lazy with LinkedIn. But it is a really good place to make connections and to find jobs. And they actually have really good articles in LinkedIn, if you can be bothered to look for them, which I sometimes do. And I think, I've really got to come back to LinkedIn, and then I never do. But it is a really important place to have at least something about yourself on LinkedIn. You don't have to have a whole lot, but as long as you've got something, because people Google your LinkedIn profile and want to find out, what you've been doing. So that's really important to have something there. And I guess it's just picking which platform appeals to you and where you want to put your time, because, like, let's face it, no one's got 8 hours a day to spend on social media connecting and doing those things. So you sort of need to pick where you're going to go.
Sorry, I've heard LinkedIn is great, but it does take sort of the time that you actually put into it to get results. I've heard of people getting job offers and doing really well, but, they've really marketed themselves on it and joined groups and, networked personally and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Like, LinkedIn is great, but you've got to not be me. And people have gotten job offers through Twitter as well. I've heard about that. But I just really think you need to find your platform and go for that one. Like, don't try and be across 50 places at once. You won't be. But LinkedIn, as much as Twitter's a good place to learn from the community and people do post interesting articles, so is LinkedIn. There's a lot of good stuff on LinkedIn, just general articles to read that don't take very long when you want to just do some sort of quick learning and stuff like that. So what do I know about learning? Well, obviously I know about my research with Kate Davis that I just spoke about. And has anyone ever heard of 23 Things? So that's like they do it in a lot of libraries. And this kind of shows how, they're doing 23 research things at the moment. Anne's Australian New Zealand Data Service. If you go onto Twitter, or if you look up ANZ, they're doing 23 research things. 23 things are a really good place to get started. So 23 things are just basically 23 things. And it's a bit like a MOOC, but not really. And what it is it's a snapshot of, you just learn something quickly about a topic. So the 23 research things would be good for anybody that's interested in being a research librarian or interested in finding out more about data, because it's just 23 quick little things. It's nothing big at all. It's not designed to be a MOOC or to be hard work. It's designed to be here's. They did a big one in libraries when everything started going digital. They did 23 digital things. So it was a way for library staff to explore, and these tools were just emerging, Facebook, Twitter, all those sort of things. They did it, and so every week they would just look at a different topic, so it just runs for 23 weeks. So there's a lot of free ones of those around that you can look at. So as I said, there's the research one going on at the moment, but I would definitely Google 23 things and see if you can find Jan Holmquist, who is a, I want to say Danish, but he's not. Jan Holmquist. Anyway, he's a librarian. It's Holmquist, and Jan, Jan. He is I can't remember where he's from, but he's a really nice guy. He's a big pioneer into 23 things, and I would recommend that you have a look at the stuff, because all the stuff that he and Miley Joseph, if you're not following Miley, get onto it. And she is M-Y-L-E-E Joseph, J-O-S-E-P-H. Yeah, M-Y-L-E-E. Miley is, works at the State Library of New South Wales, and everything amazing that you ever see the State Library of New South Wales do, Miley is done she's somewhere in that project. Like so her and Jan have done quite a few 23 things, and all those things are really available online, so they're good to look at. I ran a 23 things program for QUT Library when I used to work there for the staff, except we had 24 things. We just added one more because we thought it would be fun. We actually had a Candy Crush week, so that's how we got 24 things, because everyone got a week off to play Candy Crush. So that was a really interesting thing to do, actually, in the profession, and it showed you, oh, thanks for sharing the Jan Holmquist link, Kaz. And because it showed you how interested in learning librarians are, because I think there's a bit of, there's a sort of an awareness amongst the profession that they need to stay on top of stuff. There was a lot of reluctance about social media, in particular with librarians when it first came out. Now you'll find some librarians embedded in social media. So, you know, like if you want to ask a question, you can tweet public libraries. And this is another interesting thing about where the personal and professional are going to cross, because some librarians are using their personal accounts to answer reference desk queries or academic queries. So I might be Kathleen Smeaton, librarian, but when a student in a course in the faculty that I'm a librarian for asks a question about that unit, then do I, Kathleen Smeaton, librarian, answer, or does QUT Library answer? So these are really interesting things. So there was a lot of resistance to a lot of this stuff when it first came out in the profession, but now people have realised that this is the way it's going and they need to learn about it and they need to get on board. And that's where a lot of these 23 things courses are really good, because they're just quick snapshots. They're not designed to be hard or tricky. But Jan and Miley are really, really good to look at and to, and I think all their resources are open on open online. Sorry, Neil, what's a bit dodge? I'm missing that. Did I miss? I know, I mean, but what do you think's a bit dodgy? The 23 things?
I think he was talking about, like, your account or the QUT account.
Oh, okay, yes, no, sorry, yep, no, that's what I get. Sorry, yeah, celebrity librarians. There are some celebrity librarians, I have to say. Jan and Miley are amongst them. If I think of any more, David Lankeys. Using your personal info, yeah, that does seem a bit dodgy, Neil, but I think people do it now. It's a very interesting, especially people with well-known librarians. I mean, Kim Tyre is a great example of a celebrity librarian. She doesn't answer reference questions on Twitter, but she's a celebrity librarian, I would class her as. But yeah, there are a few of them out there, the stars of the library world, of which there are many. All right. So this is the massive, big question, and that's why I've put someone screaming, because I don't think there's a good answer. Should professional development be mandatory? Anyone want to hazard an opinion there? Anyone? Anyone? A new career aspiration of celebrity librarian? Yep.
Maybe not mandatory, but you're going to get left behind pretty quickly if you don't make an effort to go to some conferences or go to some opportunities when they come up for professional development. You're just going to be stuck doing the same old jobs while other people do other things.
It's mandatory in a lot of professionals. It is in the art professionals. We have to do 20 hours a year to register. Teachers have to do 20 hours a year to register, so why not librarians?
And that's one of the vexed questions of librarianship, where some people are like, oh, there is no way. Oh, sorry, Neil, we were saying again, should it be mandatory, the professional development? Some people just don't think that you should mandate it, that it should just be up to the individual people. But it's a changing profession. And if we want employers to give us time off for it, then having it as a mandatory thing kind of gives you more pull. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you want me to remain qualified, I need to have 20 hours to attend these conferences or to do a MOOC or to do whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's a different thing. But then, Sarah, that's a good opinion. Former lawyer. Like, lawyers have to do it, but it might not be mandated. So I think these are really important things to think about. I don't have the answer about whether it should be mandatory or not. I think, I don't know. I've got no idea, really. Sometimes I think that'd be a good idea, and other times I think when you force people to do stuff.
I guess, like, you already address it, but you have to be supported by your institution or your employer to be able to do it. You've got to be paid to get to go to it, otherwise it's hard.
Yeah, sorry.
I just thought it was really interesting, something in one of the readings, the Leong and Phillips one, that IFLA, which is the International Federation of Libraries, or something like that, they actually have said 10% of an employer's time has to be on PD and 2% of the budget. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and I never knew that.
Yeah, and I mean, it is really interesting. And if we're supposed to be teaching people how to learn and how important information is, then it sort of makes sense that we would have this mandatory professional development scheme. But having been on the other end where you're trying to force people to do professional development, I'm like, no way. People don't want to be here, don't come. So I think it's a really hard balance, because I think it's really important, but then when you're people that don't want to be there and you're trying to say, no, we have to do this, it's really hard for the people delivering the training. So it's very tricky. It's a hard one to figure out.
I think, or just personally speaking, that I've had to go to a lot of professional development in my time, and which I don't, have not felt, annoyed about unless there's relevance to it. And sometimes you're told what you need to go to, and then you know that you cannot transfer that, and so it's really the relevance and whether or not you get to choose. I think that's is it mandatory because the employer will tell you have to do this, if you know what I mean.
No, I do know what you mean, and I think that's a great question for librarians as well, because there's a lot of question about what's relevant to libraries, and a lot of people think that stuff, you know what I mean? Like, it's a hard thing, because stuff might be relevant that people don't think is relevant. And it's a very tricky thing to answer. And I guess my best advice for you is to be reflective, which is what we'll talk about next week, and reflective about what it is you want to learn and why you want to learn it.
Yeah, that's really what I was going to say, is that sometimes if you get off the treadmill for a minute and have a look back and have a look forward, you can see things much more clearly when you're actually out of your workspace and have time to reflect on what you've done and plan on what you're going to do. So,
so I would encourage everybody to be a bit reflective and be really open-minded when it comes to lifelong learning, because some of the things that you might think, they could never have imagined 5 years ago what knowledge and learning librarians today would need. So when you think about your lifelong learning and whatever you want to learn about, be really broad and be really open. Bring it back to what Beck said, like project management skills, all these different things. If there's an area that you're passionate about, learn all you can about it, because these skills are going to be more and more important, and learn about different areas, because that's all good stuff to know and to have in your little basket of tricks as you go out into the workforce. And I guess that sort of brings me on to what I was going to say about next week. So this is the end. Everyone can go home. So next week, it's not me. It is Kate and Ellie. Oh, look at me. I had to check who it was. So it was Kate and Ellie. Kate and Ellie are going to be talking about... so they're going to talk about reflective practice. So they're going to talk about what it means to be a reflective practitioner. They're going to do some reflective writing, all that sort of reflection stuff. They're much more expert at it than I am at writing reflections, so good to know that they'll be there, not me. And they are also going to, next week, there's two panels coming up. The first one next week is non-traditional librarian roles. I've got that right? Yep. So non-traditional librarian roles. And the week after are traditional librarian roles. So if you're wondering about where do I want to work, it's good to come to those. I mean, the non-traditional one I would really highly recommend, because sometimes you go, what? You're a librarian where? How do you get to be that librarian? Beyonce has a librarian. How do you get to be that librarian? I was like, when I heard that, I was like, I wonder if Ewan McGregor needs a librarian. Perhaps I should ask him. I don't think he'd respond though, but he has like a big collection of motorbikes. They must have manuals or something that need cataloguing, and like, I could be all over that information, Ewan. Yeah, maybe I need to tweet Ewan McGregor and say, hey, Ewan, just wondering, have Beyonce's got one, they're a growing trend, and, oh, Johnny Depp, yeah, and another thing, the other best place I've heard about being a librarian, there's a really cool librarian, Ruth, I can't remember her last name. She works with like astronomers doing cool, like imagine doing that with stars. But she was like, yeah, everybody should go for this job, a librarian in a brewery. So yeah, wineries need librarians. The Triple J's got librarians, like ABC Radio National. There's lots and lots of cool places. So if Beyonce doesn't work out for you, there are backup plans, and I'll let you know how I go with Ewan McGregor. Yeah, that is, well, I don't know, I think Ewan would be better. Sorry.
When are these panels? Are they part of the class next week?
Yeah, so next week will just be a solid panel. There'll be just questions and answers. Yeah, no, I think Ewan McGregor, or Nigella Lawson is the other one I'm angling for. I love her. Yeah, well, I would just imagine hanging out with her. She'd feed you. Life's complete. So any questions? Just ask me, email me, tweet someone else, talk to your peers, talk to your workmates, check out LinkedIn, all these places to learn. But whatever you do, just ask. Someone will know the answer. So, and if anyone can help me out about getting that job, Nigella or Ewan, I'm all good. All right, thanks, guys. Anyone online, if you've got any questions, I'm just muting the microphone.